In the past several videos, we've been focusing on your past experiences, helping you lose the baggage that comes from past experiences and helping you find meaning in your life experiences. Well, in this video, I want to help you learn a skill that once you learn it will really help you rid yourself of any pain that you feel from anything that's happened in your past. And it's the skill that I call retell the story that you tell yourself about what happened to you so that you're no longer the victim, but the hero of that story. So often when we tell stories of our past, when we tell stories of things that happened to us last week, yesterday, this morning, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, 40 years ago, there's pain associated with that story. And that every time we tell that story, whether we're telling it to someone else or whether we're telling that story to ourselves, there's pain associated with that. If you are feeling pain from a past experience, it's very difficult for you to feel happiness, optimism, and feel satisfied in that moment. And yet we all have experiences like that. For example, I had a gentleman come up to me after a seminar once and he said, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe that you talked about retelling the story, because for so many years I have felt the pain of an experience that happened to me in high school." And I was curious as to what this experience was. And he said that he had been a jock in high school. He had been very popular. And that in his senior year, he was not invited to be part of the homecoming court. And he was really offended by that and very hurt by that. And for more than 30 years, he felt the pain associated with that story. What are the stories in your life that when you relive them, when you retell them, it brings you pain? Is it something your parents said at graduation? Is it that your father said you weren't pretty, or that your parents said that you were stupid? Anything along those lines can make you feel pain when you relive that story. Well, I want to share with you that you don't have to feel that pain anymore, that once you learn this skill, within 90 seconds, you can be free of that pain. In fact, it's something that you can learn so that you no longer have to be a victim to your past, but you can be a hero in that story. And by a hero, I don't mean that you're going to be saving anyone's life but your own. And I really don't mean that you're a firefighter rescuing people. What I really mean is that you're no longer a victim. And the opposite of being a victim is being a hero. Now, let me tell you something that happened to me. When I was 8 years old, my mother sent my brother and sister and I to the store. She gave us a list of things to buy, and we went to the store, and she said, after you buy the things at the store, you can spend the change on candy and stop in the park and eat the candy, and then come home and we'll celebrate the end of summer and the beginning of school. And we did. It was wonderful. We went to the store. We were the best little shoppers that we could be. We bought everything on sale, maximized the change so that we could maximize the candy, and we stopped in the park and ate it. A few hours later, we go home, open the door, the house is empty, and my mom is gone. And I did not see her again for 40 years. Now imagine the impact that that would have on my life. Imagine all of the things that I've had to go through and all the pain that I've had to live because my mother abandoned me. And now as we're talking about this, you could imagine maybe that I got involved in drugs. Maybe I got involved in alcohol. Maybe there was infidelity in my marriage because I don't trust women. I could be angry. I could have abandonment issues. There could be so many things that have happened to me and so many negative things in my life because of that one event. And I could blame myself for my mother leaving. In fact, right now on this video, if I were to say to you, and I blame myself for my mother leaving, you might understand and think that that's very plausible. But let me ask you this. Is there anything that an 8-year-old boy could do to make his mother leave? Is there anything that I could have done that would cause her to want to leave her family and leave her children? I don't think there is. So why should I blame myself about that experience? And yet, this is not about me. This is about you and your stories, because I know in telling this story that many of you have a similar story from your childhood, from your experiences, whether it happened a long time ago or it recently happened. This is about your stories that you tell yourself, just like I tell myself that story about my mother abandoning me over and over again. You have a choice to tell that story as a victim or as a hero. Well, I'm very fortunate that none of those things that I mentioned really happened to me. I have not been involved in those kinds of things when you think that I had. And I was very fortunate that I did not blame myself for my mother leaving. Because at a very early age, I was blessed with the ability to retell the story that I tell myself about what happened to me. And this is what I'd like you to do as well. I'd like you to think about the story that came to your mind as I've been talking. What is that one thing that you would like to get rid of in your past that brings you pain? And now let's retell the story in such a way that it makes you a hero in that story and no longer a victim. And I'm going to do it by retelling my own story to show you how it's done. When I was 8 years old, my mother sent my brother and sister and I to the store. And when we came back, house was empty, mom was gone, and I didn't see her again for 40 years. Now notice, the story didn't change. Because the facts are the facts. And you don't want to be lying to yourself by changing the facts. The fact is, my mother left me. My mother abandoned me. But here's where I change the story. And I'm going to keep the facts the same, but I'm going to have a different emotional outcome. And the different emotional outcome is that I'm not going to be a victim in that story. And here's how the retelling goes. There must have been something so intense going on in my mother's life that she felt the best thing to do was to leave. And may God bless her. You see, that's not my fault, because there's nothing that I could have done to make her leave, and so why should I blame myself? There was something very intense going on in her life, and she really did feel that the best thing to do was to leave. But notice, I'm a hero in that story because I'm no longer the victim. You can do the same thing with your own stories that you retell to yourself. And now the challenge is to retell them so that you're no longer a victim. Let me tell you this story. Not that long ago, I was giving a seminar, and I noticed in the back that there was a woman that was just full of tears as I was describing this story, and I thought maybe that the story of my mother abandoning me touched her in some way. Well, after the seminar, she came up and said that she had been physically abused by her father from the time that she was 4 until the time that she was 18. She was now 32 and felt that she could never get over that experience. And by retelling the story, I want you to remember that this does not resolve anybody from any or absolve anybody from any accountability. They are still responsible and they're still on the hook for what they did. So by retelling the story is not going to change the accountability that my mother has, nor is it going to change the accountability that this woman's father had. And so the way that we work together is that I asked her to think of one positive thing that came out of the experience of being abused by her father. Now, many of you might say, well, there's nothing good that could come of that. And to her credit, she said the same thing. She didn't believe me that she could be able to retell the story so that she could be a hero of that story because it was so devastating. But I challenged her to really think about it. A few weeks later, we met again, and she had the biggest smile on her face because she told me that she was able to find one positive thing that came from her father physically abusing her for all of those years. And I said, oh, tell me. I'm very interested. What is that positive thing? She said this. She said, I have learned to be a peacemaker. I'm a peacemaker because I can tell when someone is about to get angry. I can see it in their body language. I can see it on their face. I can see it in what they're about to do. And I'm able sometimes to get into the middle of that and resolve the issue before it turns into something major, before it becomes more serious. I'm a peacemaker. And the reason that she's a peacemaker is because she lived with her father and was able to tell when she was about to be beat. Now, is that something positive from that? Well, some of you may say, well, no, that's not positive at all. But for her, that was very positive because it actually had a minor blessing in her life. She felt that she was a better person because of the adversity that she had gone through. Now it was all about retelling the story about that one positive thing. And she did. She retold the story around that one positive thing. She was finally able to feel relief from the pain that she had experienced from the abuse. Now, again, this does not mean her father's off the hook. He is still responsible. He is still accountable for what he did. But it changes the emotions associated with that story. When you learn to retell the story that you tell yourself about what happened to you, you no longer need to feel the pain. You can be the hero of that story instead of the victim. And when you are no longer the victim, you are done with the baggage, you are done with the pain, and you can start to feel happier than you ever have felt before. It is time to be done with those things that have happened in the past. It is time to be done with being a victim. It is time to be a hero in your own life.